Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars figure review. Today we're taking a look at the Armourer from the Mandalorian, and this figure comes to us as part of Hasbro's vintage collection. This is a really cool figure, although in my personal opinion it's not quite as good as the Black Series 6-inch release. There are a couple of aspects of this figure that aren't quite up to scratch in terms of articulation and just the overall sculpt and the way the figure's been put together. Visually, it's a stunning addition to the collection and it's a great 3 3/4 inch representation of the character, but there are just certain aspects of the way this figure has been made that I don't quite enjoy as much as the Black Series release. But we'll get into all of that throughout this review. As always, if you want to pick this figure up for yourself, there is a link down below in the video description where you can do so, and that will take you to staractionfigures.co.uk. This figure comes to us as part of the same wave as the Beskar Mandalorian that I gave you a look at in my last review, and also Moff Gideon, who we'll be taking a look at in my next video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. So let's kick off this review, and as always we'll jump into it by taking a look at the packaging that this one comes in. So here we have another stunning vintage card back. I absolutely love the image that has been used on this card. As you can see, this is a press shot of the Armourer from the Mandalorian. She's got the furnace in the background there, in the hidden bunker on Navarro. Just a really moody, well lit shot. It just looks so good. I really do like the image that's been used on this one. As you can see at the top, you've got the Mandalorian logo and the Kenner logo down at the bottom, but really just a stunning card back all round. Definitely one to hunt down for the carded collection if you are a mint on card collector. On the reverse side, you'll see some other figures available as part of the vintage collection. As I mentioned, this one does come as part of the same wave as the Mandalorian himself and Moff Gideon, and also Darth Vader from Rogue One and Captain Rex from the Clone Wars. So some really cool figures available as part of this collection, and a really cool figure in the Armourer and a really cool card for this one as well. So there is the packaging. Now let's take a look at the figure that we get inside. So here is the Armourer free of her plastic prison, and for the most part this is a really nice figure. There are certain aspects of it that I dislike, and we will touch base on those throughout this review, but for the most part, especially in terms of a visual representation of the character, this is a really cool figure. I think the paint applications on this one certainly rival the Black Series 6-inch version. The overall sculpt is really nice. And considering the fact that the fur on this figure is sculpted plastic as opposed to the soft goods we saw on the exclusive version, it's a really nice addition. And again, the paint apps on this figure are absolutely stunning. There's a ton of depth and realism going on with this one. Now, before we jump into the review itself, we will touch base on the accessories that she comes with, as I'm going to have to remove these from the figure's hands in order to give you a real good look at the pros and cons of this figure. Now, as you can see, she does come with some armor forging tools in the form of the hammer and the tongs there, which are very similar accessories to the ones that were included with her Black Series 6-inch counterpart. Obviously, the exclusive version came with slightly different variations of these accessories, but for the most part they are exactly the same as the ones that came with the Black Series 6-inch figure. Really nice in their own right, nicely sculpted, nicely put together, nothing special, but pretty good. You know, she doesn't use any weapons in the show, so these were necessary inclusions. But one of the issues that I do have with these, at least with the tongs, are the fact that she doesn't hold them in the hands too well. The grip on one of her hands is just a little bit too wide, and the tongs tend to pop out. If you don't get both handles in the hand, they will just fall straight out, and once you do get both handles into a hand, they do have a tendency to pop out at will, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I've managed to get them displayed nicely for the sake of this review, and they do look good for the most part. But again, in terms of functionality, she doesn't hold them too well, and the same can be said for the hammer as well. It's almost like the handle is a little bit too thin, and if you give it the slightest little nudge, it will just slip straight through the hand. So a quick fix for that is, of course, to just soften up the plastic of the hands in boiling water, close them up and run them under cold water to set them, and that should solve the issue. So I'm probably going to do that following this review, but just thought I'd point that out nonetheless. So with the accessories aside, let's remove them from the hands and let's get a look at this figure in more detail. Now, as I said, for the most part, this one is really good. I love the sculpt. I think it definitely rivals, in terms of detail, the Black Series 6-inch figure. As you can see, the helmet is really nicely weathered. It's got this really dirty wash going on, which really brings out and highlights some of that detail on the helmet itself. The helmet is a great design. I said this in my review of the Black Series 6-inch exclusive figure, and you can check that review out here on the channel if you haven't done so already. That this is just such a fantastic design, and it reminds me of the Mountain from Game of Thrones. It's got this really cool Spartan sort of look to it, and it's just such a cool and unique design. Really do like that. The horns on the top, as you can see, are really nicely sculpted. The visor looks fantastic, and the rest of the figure just has such crisp paint applications. I absolutely love the way this figure looks. The weathering on the lower portion of the skirt there, as you can see, great detail going on. It's got a nice dirty wash once again. It's got this epic colour palette going on. Great detail on the belt as well. Padded gloves, perfect for forging armour. And again, that detail continues on the back of the figure, particularly in the fur hood. That's one of the things that really swayed me towards picking up the Black Series 6-inch exclusive over the basic release, is the fact that the exclusive came with soft goods and the regular release came with a plastic cowl. But you know, having seen this figure, I don't think there's much between them. I think the painted detail on this really gives the illusion of the fur texture, and it looks fantastic. And I would have loved to have seen what this figure would have looked like with soft goods in place of that, but this really does do the job, ticks all the boxes and looks great. But again, sculpt, absolutely top notch. It looks fantastic. The paint applications are really nicely applied, and again, visually it is a stunning figure. Now, my issues with this one lie within the way it's been put together. My first issue is with the legs. Now, I'm not sure whether this is my particular sample, but it almost feels like one leg is longer than the other, and for this reason I've had a really hard time getting this figure to stand. This is probably the best position I've had her legs in while I've owned the figure. I've had this one for a couple of months now, but while it's been posed on my shelf, she's sort of had one leg in front of the other in sort of this mid-step sort of motion, and it just feels like one leg is longer than the other, and she doesn't want to stand up, and when you do place her down on a shelf, she has this tendency to topple and wobble around before she stands in place. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Again, this could just be my sample, so don't let that put you off picking up this figure if you want to add it to your collection, but it's just something I thought was worth pointing out. I'm not sure whether that's again just an issue with my figure or whether it's a widespread problem. Now, the second problem I have, and this is really getting this is sort of nitpicky, I guess, but the neck post feels a little bit too long. The helmet feels far removed, or too far removed from the shoulders. As you can see, there's quite a gap there, and for that reason it just looks a little bit awkward when posing. But again, that could just be me. I'm really being nitpicky when it comes to that, but it is just a flaw that I did find for myself when comparing this one to the Black Series release. At the same time, I suppose in terms of functionality it works better because it gives you a better range of movement at the head itself, and it doesn't get in the way of the fur collar, but it's there nonetheless, and it's a little bit distracting at times. Now, the main issue that I have with this one lies within the articulation. Now, this one does feature ball hinges at the shoulders, but because the cowl is made of plastic and it's secured in place, it hinders that articulation, and I cannot get this figure to lift her arms for the life of me. As you can see, that's about as far as it gets, and that's an issue for me. I really would have liked to have been able to pose this figure in different ways, but you just can't do that with the arms, unfortunately. They don't lift up, they move up and down, which is fine, but they don't lift up, and that's because of this plastic cape. And for that reason, that's why I would have liked to have seen this being soft goods. Again, visually, it's fantastic. It looks great, but it just hinders that articulation, and that's a real big issue for me. So, not entirely thrilled about that. But again, for a figure that's going to stand on a shelf, this one fits the bill. Now, in terms of the other articulation this figure has, as I mentioned, she does have a ball joint at the head, and it's the new sort of ball joint where there's a ball in the neck post and at the top of the head. So again, there's a really nice fluid range of movement going on there. She can look up, down, all around, really, really good. She does have hinges at the shoulders again, but what's the point? And we also have hinges at the elbows, at the wrists, a ball joint at the torso. Again, it's more of a swivel. The armour does get in the way a little bit, but it's there nonetheless. She does feature hinges at the hips as well, and there is a cut down the side of the skirt or kamer, which allows for added positioning and posability, which is good. She has swivel cuts at the upper thigh as well, hinges at the knees and hinges at the ankles. So decent articulation. Again, some areas of it are hindered, but for the most part, it's a really well designed figure, at least in terms of overall sculpt and aesthetic. Again, certain issues with the functionality of this one, but again, the one leg longer than the other issue could just be my sample, but the articulation certainly is a problem. So just bear that in mind when picking this one up. But again, if what you're looking for is just a really cool 3 3/4 inch armourer figure to stand on your shelf and dish out advice to the Mandalorian himself, then again, this figure ticks the boxes. She looks fantastic, comes with some great accessories, and really does have great shelf presence. So I definitely recommend this one. Don't let my nitpicking and the flaws that I've pointed out in this review override your decision as to whether or not to pick this one up. It is a recommended figure. Again, more so for the visual aspect than anything else. It looks superb. So that's going to do it for this review. I hope you've enjoyed tuning in, and I'll be back with some more vintage collection reviews very soon. So until then, as always, thank you for watching, keep collecting, and may the force be with you.